Hello and thank you for joining our channel once again. Today's video is about fermentation, specifically what we're making here, which is Pear. Pear is a cider made from pears. Come along with us and we hope you learned something today. Okay, this is a steam juicer. You're going to start with this basin on the bottom, and this is filled with water. And then above that, this is what your juice is going to collect in. There's a little spout here. You attach a hose to that. This is what you put your fruit in. And then finally there's the lid. So how we're going to start is we're going to go ahead and throw this in here. Put the fruit basket there. And I'm going to be using a mesh bag. If you've ever messed with pears before, you know that there's a lot of mealiness to them. Have a lot of fiber there, and the better you can strain that out and keep it out of your must, the better off you are. So I'm not even going to wash these because these are going to be heated. It's basically going to be pasteurizing this whole must mixture, all the juice, whatever you want to call it. We're just going to fill the basket up. I'll cut these into pieces. I'm not going to remove stem or anything like that. And I'll just fill this up. Okay, now that I've filled this up, I just have the burner on medium heat, and I'm going to let that sit there and steam. If you've never seen a steam juicer, let me just kind of walk you through this. All this is just a hose. There's a clamp here to hold it on there. This end of it has another clamp, and that's just going to keep your juice from dripping all over the place. So when we see that this is full of juice, we'll release this clamp and we'll collect it in our pitcher. Not a lot to do now except for put the lid on it and just let it do its thing. Okay, just want to show a couple quick things on steam juicing. You see how clear that is? There's no cloudiness to the juice. That's why I prefer steam juicing to other methods, especially with pears. There's just so much sediment and stuff. This mesh bag that I have on here, I think is going to help that too. We've got our we're still making juice in the background, but we have 1 gallon of pear juice, and this is still warm, which is good because if we need to add sugar, then it'll stir up nicely and it will dissolve. So we're going to set this to the side, and I'm just going to show you a couple of the instruments I'm going to use. We have a 1 gallon glass carboy, and it's halfway or a third of the way filled with water, warm water. Turkey baster, a hydrometer, graduated cylinder, and then this is Star San. This is a sanitizer that you don't have to rinse. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and sanitize everything. Into the water, we are just going to add just a little bit. Let's call it a teaspoon of sanitizer, and then I'm just going to shake this up. A little bit of that goes a long ways. And then next I will just use my turkey baster to sanitize my graduated cylinder. Again, no rinse, don't worry about it. And then I will use the graduated cylinder to sanitize my hydrometer. And just plunk it down in there, pull it back out, that's all you need to do. And now we'll just dump this out. I filled the graduated cylinder back up with water so that I can show you how the hydrometer works. Okay, now everything is sanitized, everything is clean. And I want to show you how this hydrometer works, if you don't know already. If you look here on this, it says right above where it says beer, 0.990, 1.0. Let me show you what the specific gravity of water is. Okay, you can see the line below. When you're taking a measurement in water, that water is going to kind of do this. And it's higher at the edge than it is in the center. What you actually want to look for is where the line is at in the center of the water. So down in that dip, not on the edge. So you're actually looking at 1.00, and it's kind of hard to show what that is. But just so you know, 1.00, that's water. Okay, so there's no sugar in there. The gravity of water is 1.0, same as if you were going to do a dry wine or a dry anything. If it's super, super dry, it would end up at 1.0. Okay, with all the nerd stuff out of the way, we're going to dump this back out. And you don't have to have any of this stuff to make wine. This is how I do it. This is how a lot of people do it. But if you just wanted to try it, if you want to make Perry, if you want to make your own batch and you don't have any of these instruments, it's fine. You can still do this. You don't have to have this stuff. But this is how we're going to do it today. And we're doing it my way because this is my video. Okay, we're going to be measuring the specific gravity of our must. That's the juice. We are going to fill this up. Actually, I'm going to put this in here first. And what you do, so you don't have to fill it up so high, is if you put your hydrometer in there first, you just fill it up until your hydrometer floats. And then you don't have to fill as much stuff in there. Okay, just starting to float now. I'll just add a little bit more. All right. It's important that the hydrometer is not touching the bottom of whatever you're measuring in. That's why you would use a cylinder such as this, because it's deeper than this is, deeper than that is, and your hydrometer, it is longer than either of those two, so it doesn't really work. So you want to have something like this. Here is our hydrometer. I'm just going to give it a spin. That way it'll want to stay in the center. Okay, and my reading on this is 1.03. You see where the 1.00 is at? Notice how the 10, 20, and 30 right there, they're underneath the next place. So we've got tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. So we are 1.030, not 1.30. So don't get that mixed up. That measurement, a lot of people get mixed up, but it's pretty easy to figure out because you have, this starts at 1.0 up here, and this is 1.1. So there's no way that it can be 1.3 here because 1.1 is down here. And 1.1, that would be like a dessert wine. Okay, so 1.030, I've written that down. I need to keep track of that number. Some people won't pour this back in there. I don't know why they wouldn't. You have everything sanitized. Go ahead and do that. Now what we want to do is we want to figure out how sweet do we want this. Okay, so the way this works is if you were looking to do a beer, the start, see where it says start, that would be on the upper end of what you would start a beer at. So this would end up being pretty weak if it went all the way to dry. So probably what we're gonna try to shoot for is somewhere below the beer scale and into the table wine scale. There's several different ways you can sweeten your must. You can use sugar, you can use honey, you can use a different fruit that's sweeter, such as really ripe apple. Apples have a lot of sugar in them. The easiest way though is sugar. So I'm gonna put a cup of brown sugar in there, and I'm gonna do about 3/4 of a cup of white sugar. I use what's called a wine whip for really getting down and dirty and getting some real good stirring on. I will go ahead and sanitize this, and it's pretty simple. You just put her on there. Okay, we've got that stirred in. Let's take another specific gravity reading. Okay, she's afloating now. We're gonna, if you spin it, it knocks the bubbles off there. I don't do it just to look cool or anything. Okay, we're right at the start of a table wine, which is okay for what we're doing here. I should mention too, there are 2 different scales on here. One is the Brix scale, which I don't use. And the other one is a specific gravity scale. So I'm okay with starting at a 1.06. Obviously you can see that we dropped from 30 to 60, and that was with 3/4 of a cup of white sugar and 1 cup of brown sugar. That tells you how much sugar you gotta add to this thing. Now, if you look and rotate this around, this says approximate potential alcohol by volume. So if you go around to this, so it's in between, so you've got 10 is down here and we're up here. So we're looking at about 8%, which is fine by me. We're not going for a wine, we're going for a Perry, which is cider. So I think we're good. We're gonna go ahead and write that down so that we can remember. It's important, if you are doing this, to write your measurements down. The juice came out of a steam juicer. I didn't really let it cool down that well. We've done some mixing and adding some different things. We're gonna go ahead and just check the temperature of this. 92, okay. That's gonna be fine. It'll be cool enough, it won't kill our yeast. So that's the last thing we wanna do. I wouldn't go much higher than that. About 95 is probably max. Okay, then all we're gonna do here is we're gonna pour this into our bottle that we're gonna be brewing in. And this pitcher is probably a little full. There's probably a little bit too much in here for what we need. You're gonna have some bubbles here at the end, so just swirl that. That'll knock the bubbles down. Okay, we're only gonna fill it to just kind of as it's starting to go around this radius and starting to go up the neck. We want to leave some headspace here. Now let's talk about yeast. Okay, today we're gonna use a Premier Blanc. This is an active dry yeast, works fine for cider, works good for wine. You can get cider yeast that's specialty for cider, but it is more expensive. This is one of the more affordable packets of yeast you can get. You don't need a lot of it, and I'm going to show you how much you need here. Per manufacturer's instructions, for one thing, this thing is big enough to do 5 gallons of wine. It also tells you that you should add this to a 1/4 cup of water at 95 to 100 degrees and wait 20 minutes before use. I found that that's kind of a waste of time. You can do that step, I don't. So you need roughly 1/5 of this to make 1 gallon of wine. And I'm just gonna put a half a teaspoon in. To our must. And I'm just gonna add this directly and boom, there it is. Okay, the yeast is in there, or pitched, whatever you wanna call it. Once I put the yeast in, I will throw a cork on here and just kind of give it a little swirl and shake. Make sure I get everything out of the neck. If it makes you feel any better, you can leave it like this for 20 minutes. Just leave it open, and that's what we'll do. We'll come back in about 20 minutes. I am also going to be adding a half teaspoon of yeast nutrients. Pears are kind of fickle. So I would recommend using a yeast nutrient for doing Perry. You can do whatever you want, but I'm using nutrient. 20 minutes later, we have our airlock. What we've done is we fill this up with the sanitized solution. You've been using it the whole time, so make sure not to dump it all out. Keep some behind. This is a bung with a hole in it. And then you're just gonna put that in there. You'll put your airlock down inside of that. You don't absolutely have to have an airlock, but it is easier. It takes a lot of the guesswork away, and you don't get any of those funky flavors, because what happens is the bad guys, the acetobacters. Let me see if I can explain something here about acetobacters and yeast. Yeast is everywhere. It's on every animal, it's on every living thing. All of these different yeast strains are everywhere. Acetobacters are what turn wine into vinegar. So what we're trying to keep from happening is any of those weird flavors from coming into our must. Okay, I want to show you something real quick. See that bubble? That is not already fermented, because it's just not. The pressure just needs to kind of equalize in here, but you can see this foam on the top. That yeast is going to end up being a top fermenting yeast. Some yeast will ferment from the bottom. This one is a top fermenting one. And we're just going to let this sit now. When it comes to wine, or really any kind of fermentation, it takes time. You just have to be patient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in an area where it really can't be disturbed. I'm going to put it in the office where I do all the editing for the videos. And this is going to sit for probably at least a week. And then what we're going to do is we're going to I'll take it back out. I'll show you what I do. We'll end up doing a specific gravity test. So the next part of this video will be a week from now. Okay, we're going to record our specific gravity on our container. I just put a piece of clear tape on here, packing tape. Specific gravity, 1.060. Okay, and then today's date is the 27th of January, 2024. I'll see you in a couple days. I'll show you kind of, once this really starts making a reaction, I'll I'll let you know. I'll show you what it's doing, and I'll tell you how long it's been in there. And I'll even write the time on this. This is 4 p.m. right now. Well, here it is, day 2, and it is fermenting really well. The bubbler's going good on the airlock. It's 7 days later, our primary fermentation is done, and we're going to take another specific gravity reading. Never mind, we're not going to take another specific gravity reading because while I was sanitizing this, I accidentally dropped my hydrometer and broke it. So instead, we are going to just go to the next step. All right, well, like I said, no worries. We are going to take a clean pitcher because I don't have any more clean bottles because I have too many other projects going on. And what we're going to do is, it's called racking. In other words, we're pulling the primary fermentation off of the lees, which is what this is down here. This is all the spent yeast. These are solids that came from the pear juice. So we're just going to transfer from this to this. This is an auto siphon. And what you want to do is hold up. You want to hold the bottom of that up above this. You don't want any of that in there. So we're just going to start our siphon and we're just going to let her go. If you bring this down below it, it will go faster. Okay, that's all the junk that we left behind. We don't want that in there. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything, but you won't care for the taste of dead yeast. And the appearance is just not as good. If you have a septic system like me, this is actually a really good thing to pour just right down your drain. It will help your drain field a little bit. Okay, now that we're done with our primary fermentation, we've put it in here for now. We got it off the lees, and now we're going to put it in our secondary fermentation. You'll notice that I have re-sanitized this. The 3 most important rules of winemaking are sanitize, sanitize, and sanitize. You can't be too careful with it. Well, it's not very good, but new wine or new fermentations never are. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take the auto siphon, put it in there, and rack it into our secondary fermentation. You'll notice that even though I wasn't seeing anything in the airlock, it's still very effervescent and there's a lot of bubbling going on. I've racked it out of here into our secondary fermentation, and you'll notice a second bottle here. This was bottled on January 21st of 2023. So what I'm trying to do is, I've got all this headspace here, and this is my secondary fermentation. This is wine that's already done. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit in here to get it up into the neck. What you can do as well, if you don't have wine or you don't want to go get some wine, you could go ahead and retain a little bit of the juice, a little bit of extra juice, put it in your fridge, and then you could top this off with that, as long as you put your airlock on there, because what it will probably end up doing is a secondary fermentation. Even though we just took all that other stuff off the bottom of that bottle, all that lees, there's still suspended yeast in here. And so to avoid a bottle explosion, go ahead and put your airlock back on. So we're gonna go ahead and we'll siphon some out of here into here. Hopefully you can see that. That wine that I added had some sweetness left in it. I didn't let it go fully dry, so you can see it's already reacting with that yeast. Okay, now that that's done, we're just gonna put the airlock back on there. Of course, you wanna re-sanitize the bung and everything like that. Okay, we've relabeled this. We left our old label on, but we labeled it again. Second That's for secondary fermentation. Today's the 3rd, it's 10 a.m. No SG, we could not take this specific gravity because our hydrometer broke. So that's how you make Perry. Next will be the secondary fermentation. After that, we'll clarify it and then the aging process. I hope you were able to learn something today. After all, that's what this channel is about, is teaching people how to do things. If you have any questions, drop a comment below. I'll make sure to answer it as best I can. Thank you for watching.